Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the first video I've made. This is just going to be a simple introduction to Lincoln-Douglas debate. In it, we're going to explain how a Lincoln-Douglas debate round works, what are the parts of a Lincoln-Douglas debate case, and what Lincoln-Douglas debate is. So let's get started. First, what is Lincoln-Douglas debate? Lincoln-Douglas debate is a value debate. It is also a one-on-one debate. It's actually the only one-on-one form of debate offered in Ohio, and it's based heavily around philosophy. Many of you might be wondering, what is value debate? Well, we're getting to that right now. The value is the most important part of every Lincoln-Douglas debate case, and it's the concept that the debater believes is the most important thing in the round. Lincoln-Douglas is based around a clash of these values, and we explicitly state the value at the beginning of our case to ensure there is a clash around these values. It's another argument debaters make. Common values in debate rounds include justice, morality, autonomy, and societal welfare. So let's give an example of how a values debate would work, and we're going to use the example my coach taught me, and that's about him smoking. So Rick used to smoke a lot. He probably still does. And Rick used to argue with his mother about his smoking. She used to state that it was unhealthy for him to be smoking, and he needs to stop smoking because it's unhealthy. This didn't appeal to Rick because Rick didn't care about health. Rick would sit in the basement, stay up all night playing video games. Health was never his primary concern. He almost never went outside. He was constantly sick, and he didn't really care all that much about health. So the issue here is Rick and his mother have different values. Rick's mother has a value of health. She wants Rick to be healthy, and that's what she thinks is most important. And Rick has some other value. We don't know exactly what it is, but we could say it's autonomy, the freedom to smoke. We could say it's some sort of happiness, hedonistic type thing where he enjoys smoking, it makes him happy, so he's going to keep smoking. And the first thing you should grasp here is that values happen in everyday arguments. And the next thing you should grasp is that learning to recognize and appeal to these values helps you in debate, but it also helps you in life. It's going to be essential for you to learn values debate and how values work in Lincoln-Douglas in order to be successful, but it will also transfer to the real world. Look at this example. When Rick's mother is arguing with him about health, Rick pretty much ignores it because he doesn't care about health. Rick's mother would have been much better off appealing to his values of happiness and talking about how much better he'll feel if he stops smoking and talking about how he'll be happier if he stops smoking. And these are the types of arguments she should have been making rather than just it's unhealthy and you'll die if you keep doing it, because those weren't things that Rick particularly cared about. So the next part of a Lincoln-Douglas debate case is the value criterion, and you're probably wondering, what is a value criterion? Well, the value criterion is the action we take to achieve the value. It should be a verb because it's an action. It's something one does or one advocates for doing. Some debaters will use non-verbs. For an example, they'll just state the value criterion is utilitarianism, or they'll state the value criterion is deontology. And I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong. I'm just stating it makes much more sense for the value criterion to be a verb, because it's something we do to achieve the value. So let's look back on our previous example we gave of Rick's mother and Rick. In that debate, we could say Rick's mother could have the value criterion of of stopping smoking. So in this case, we make it a verb because that's how you achieve the value. So when Rick stops smoking, he achieves the value of health, or he gets closer to achieving the value of health. Now, some common value criterions you'll see in debate include maximizing expected well-being, maximizing individual rights, ensuring the safety of citizens, and adhering to deontic principles. And what some of you may notice is that a lot of these are just things like utilitarianism put into verb form. For an example, maximizing expected well-being is the verb form of utilitarianism. Maximizing individual rights is just the verb form of individual rights. Ensuring the safety of citizens is the verb form of Hobbes' social contract. It's just that taken and put into a way we can actually enact it, rather than stating the value criterion is Hobbes' social contract. So I advise you stay far away from cases where you run the value criterion of Locke's social contract. I think the round is much better when you make a verb out of it, and it's much easier to understand, and it's much more specific to the debate you're having. Moving on to the other parts of the case, the first other part of the case are contentions, or point of contentions, and an argument, and these are an argument that supports your value and value criterion. So let's go back up to the previous example where we have Ric's mother. Let's pretend she's writing a Lincoln Douglas debate case because she's desperate to get Ric to understand he needs to stop smoking. So she has a value of health, she has a value criterion of stopping smoking, and her contention she could have could be a first contention, could be cancer. She could have a second contention of the general harms of smoking. So under contentions, because you might realize that these are very vague. So in order to get into more specific arguments that are subsets of contentions, we have something called subpoints, and they're smaller arguments that are inside of contentions. And the important thing about subpoints is they should be part of the contention. They should be a smaller sub-argument of it. So let's go back to our previous example. In contention 1, which we said was cancer, Ric's mother could have some subpoints of lung cancer, throat cancer, and any other cancers that smoking causes. In her next contention, which was the general harms of smoking, she could have subpoints about bad breath, about how smoking makes your clothes smell, and things like that. But she also doesn't necessarily need subpoints. I'd argue she should have subpoints for the first contention, but it might be better to have no subpoints in the second contention. The important thing to remember about contentions and subpoints is all of your arguments in a debate round, especially in Lincoln Douglas debate, need to link back to the value. So if you notice in the previous example, Ric's mother values health. Well, her contentions that smoking causes cancer, her subpoints that smoking causes lung cancer and it causes throat cancer, all link back to the contention of health, or to the value of health, because they explain that cancer isn't healthy, smoking causes cancer, thus smoking is not healthy, so you shouldn't smoke. And this explains how her value criterion achieves her value of health. So the next question you're probably asking is, how does an LD round work? Because you now know how a case works in Lincoln Douglas debate. And a round starts with the affirmative constructive. This is the first speech in a round. It's 6 minutes, and it's given by the affirmative or the aff speaker. During the speech, the affirmative side sets up their arguments. This means they'll read their case, they'll read what their value is, they'll read what their value criterion is, and they'll read their contentions and subpoints. It's entirely pre-written, so it's read from a piece of paper or a laptop, and it should be entirely pre-written. It's commonly referred to as the AC. The next speech in a round, or the next thing that happens in a round, it's not so much a speech, is the negative cross-examination of the affirmative. This is a 3-minute period in which the neg debater asks the affirmative debater questions. The affirmative may not ask questions to the negative during this period. So if you're the negative side in this, you shouldn't answer any questions the affirmative has, and that's your job to ensure that you don't let them take control of your cross-ex. If you're the aff, you shouldn't be necessarily trying to ask questions here. The affirmative side must answer the neg's questions, and what this means is I see this happen a lot with debaters where they decide they don't like a question, they know it's going to harm their case, and they decide the best way to deal with it is to just not answer or state something like that's not relevant to the debate round. This is just a cop-out, and I'd strongly encourage anyone watching this video to never do that. when I judge, that's pretty much a guaranteed way to get low speaker points from me. You should try to answer every question that's not overly personal. And an example of that would be you wouldn't have to answer a question like, what is your phone number? I state that's a fair question not to answer. But a question like, is slavery bad, is something you should answer in the cross-ex. The neg's goal here is to poke holes in the affirmative case and to try to set up their own case with questions. And the AF's goal here is to try not to give too much away to the negative side. The next speech is the negative constructive. It's a 7-minute speech given by the negative debater. It includes some pre-written things and some things made up on the spot, and this is because the negative side has to do both their constructive, meaning they have to both read their case or their value criterion, their contentions and subpoints, but they also have to rebut or attack the affirmative's case. The typical length for the negative constructive, or the written part of the neg case, is about 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 4 minutes. If you're shorter than 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you probably don't have enough substance in your case. And honestly, if you're going longer than 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you probably have too much in your case, and that's going to hurt you just as much as having a short case will. I'd actually argue going too long is worse than being too short. The negative debater states their case and attacks the affirmative case. I already covered that. And the speech is commonly referred to as the NC. Debaters pretty much always read their case first, then they attack their opponent's case. You don't have to do it, but that's the way everyone does it. So you should probably do it that way. It's also a good idea to do it this way because you have to read your entire case, and it's better to read your case and then spend the remaining time attacking than it is to not get a point out in your case. The next speech is the affirmative cross-examination of the negative. Just like the other one, it's 3 minutes. It works pretty much the same way as the other cross-examination. The only difference is this time it's the AF asking the neg questions. The neg can ask the AF questions during this time. The AF tries to poke holes in the negative case, build up their own arguments, and potentially here they can try and recover from a bad cross-examination that they had earlier. And what this means is if they had a really bad cross-ex, this is the place for the AF to try to look strong again in the debate round. Cross-examinations are referred to as cross-ex or CX. I think I've been better about calling them cross-examinations, but they're the same thing. The next speech is the first affirmative rebuttal. It's very difficult, probably one of the most difficult speeches to give in debate. And the reason for this is it's only 4 minutes, and you have to attack the negative case, the affirmative side, and defend your own case. So this is a lot to do in 4 minutes, and it's very difficult. So my advice here is first, try and space out the time. Try and spend 2 minutes attacking and 2 minutes defending. It won't always work out this way, but this is a good rule of thumb for new debaters to use when they're deciding how much time they need to allocate to this rebuttal. And it's really helpful because you can look at the clock and see, oh, I'm only on their value criterion and I'm 1 minute and 30 seconds into the round. I really need to move. I can't be taking as much time here, or I'm not going to be able to cover everything. The order can be given in any way. You don't have to attack first or defend first. It doesn't really matter. Debaters often use 2 to 3 minutes of prep time before giving the speech, and I didn't cover this earlier, but in a debate round, every debater gets 4 minutes of prep time they can use before a speech. I recommend strongly that debaters use the 2 to 3 minutes of prep time before giving this, because it's a very hard speech, and the more time you spend preparing, the easier it will be. There's nothing wrong with using 3 minutes here. Some people like to space it out in 2-minute intervals. I'd also like to go back and just recommend you don't take prep time before cross-examination. I don't think it's really necessary, and I think it's kind of a waste of prep. The next, one last thing on this, it's commonly referred to as the 1AR. The next speech is the negative rebuttal. This is a 6-minute speech given by the negative, And during the speech, the negative defends their case, attacks the affirmative case, and they have some time to give some things called key voting issues. These are just the reasons why the negative feels like they've won the round. And when you give key voting issues, the best thing to do is to imagine you're a judge and you're filling out your reason for decision. What you want to do is give the judge things they could put on the reason for decision. So if you were judging the round, what would you write down as the reason for decision? And those are the things that your key voting issues should be, the reasons why you've won the round. It's commonly referred to as the NR or the 2NR. The last speech in an LD round is the second affirmative rebuttal. It's 3 minutes long. It's given by the affirmative debater. Typically, the AF goes over the key issues in the round, then gives key voting issues. And to explain this here, what's going to happen in the second affirmative rebuttal is that if the AF feels the neg made a big point that they need to address, or there's some issue that they need to cover a little bit more, they'll go over it. It should generally just be one thing. Then they should go right into giving key voting issues. And these are, once again, the reasons why they feel like they've won the round. After the round is over, you're going to shake your opponent's hand and say good round. It doesn't matter if you hate them. It doesn't matter if the round was terrible. It doesn't matter if you feel like you've lost the round. Shake their hand anyways. Thank them for the round. Shake your judge's hand, and you're going to thank them for judging. The only reason you shouldn't shake hands is if you're sick. Obviously, if you're sick, please don't shake people's hands. Pack up your stuff and go check to see if the next round is posted. Keep the tournament running quickly. Don't go and buy food before you check to see if the round is posted, because you're not going to have time to eat it and you just slow everything down. Thank you. Please like and subscribe if you learned something, if you feel like this was useful. If you think I'm terrible and you hate everything about this, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for your time.